Range planning, checking you have a balanced range using the fashion triangle. So we're now heading into the range planning section of this module. So let's look and recap at the buyer's role at this point. So trends and following trends and coming up with a trend forecast is really, really important. You need to predict the future without using a crystal ball. So coming up with a trend that is going to be relevant to your store and retailer, and most importantly, going to be bought by your consumers. And it's at this stage that you're now starting to work on your CAD flat range, you're designing your product range to make your designs a reality, inspired by your trend research and your consumer identity. So there's a point of when you're designing your range plans that you have a balance of trend and commerciality. So with all the retailers that you've chosen, that you've got some items that are very trend led and directional, and some that are sort of the bread and butter of your company, ones that they are best sellers, things that work year on year, and a good amount of basics as well. So a selection of newness and repeats of or updates of bestsellers. So we're looking at those 6Ps. So we're thinking about the right product, aiming to have it at the right price, buying the right quantity, the right quality, and dropping it at the right place at the right time. So you're going to be working out your costs with Mandy, your retail prices, and buying the right amount of stock and analysing the sales and reacting to them. And there's templates that you can continue to use, like we've started to in the previous module, to help you along this process. So let's take a look at this. So range planning is an ongoing planning process. So you don't just develop your range and then it's done. There'll be many meetings. You'll be going back and forth, sometimes cancelling out items, perhaps adding new items in last minute if there's a brand new trend that you want to adapt to. So you don't just do it in 1 week and complete it. You continue to look at your range, update it, have meetings the whole time. So you started your initial range planning, developing and creating those initial CAD flats, reacting to your trends and your consumer research. You are now checking that the range that you're developing has a good balance to it using the fashion triangle and the Boston matrix next week even. So you're starting to think about rationalizing your decisions within your range planning process, and you will do this more importantly at your formative assessment bias sign off. So it's good to use the Boston matrix and fashion triangle at this point to start making sure you've got a balanced range, because you'll be able to use those templates to justify your decision making at formative. So using templates, we use a lot of templates in the fashion industry, and you've already used some. The psychographic profile graph, which we use to plot consumers or brands in relation to how quickly they adopt new trends. And we use this in point 2 of this brief to plot the consumers that you identified in your research. So you're using the psychographic profile graph in this project too, in your previous point 2. We also used in your previous unit industry introduction the price style matrix and price band matrix, which we don't need to look at for this project. So we're used to using templates. So the psychographic profile, so you're plotting your consumers in here in relation to how quickly they adopt trends. And remember, you're using it in this project 4.2. There's a lecture that covers this and the contents on your virtual learning environment for you to look back at. So there's also a lot of other templates you can use too, including the Boston matrix, which we've used before, but in this instance, you'll use it to plot garments from your range. You could also use it to plot brands from within a portfolio too, which you might use next module. And you use this to essentially check that you've got a balanced product range or a brand portfolio. Now, we'll be looking at this more next week. At the moment, we're going to focus on the fashion triangle. So it's to check the pricing architecture within a range or the pricing architecture within a brand portfolio. So making sure you've got a balanced product range basically here. So within your range plan, you're using your range plan your trend to develop a range plan targeted at your brand consumer's target consumer that you identified in point 2. And you're developing a 5 to 6 piece capsule range, including a mix of entire range, so a mix of outerwear, tops and bottoms, using your CAD flats from WGSM. So again, we're saying that you need to, within this range, have something, a balanced range, which is a good amount of trend pieces, along with pieces that are kind of really commercial. So a good balance of newness and bestsellers, looking at those 6Ps. And we can use the Boston Matrix and Fashion Triangle to check this. So let's focus on the Fashion Triangle here. So retailers use the Fashion Triangle to make sure they've got a good balance of directional pieces that are real trend-led pieces and really directional, and that typically makes up about 10% of your range. Then you've got the fashion area, which is your staple items, a bit more on kind of trend, which typically makes up about 30. And then you really rely on those basic items, sort of around about 60% of items typically here. But there is also different types of triangle. So there's that fashion triangle that we've just looked at. Some people also use some brands and retailers also use the diamond or the prism, where they have majority of fashion items and a little bit of direction or basics. And then there's sometimes the inverted triangle, where there can be mainly direction, some fashion, and some basics. So it can change depending on the retailer. So these are the types of different fashion triangles. Most retailers tend to typically have the one on the left. So look at your chosen brand and retailer's current range. So go to their website and see what kind of items they have. Look for 5 different items, perhaps within a single story, and create a screen grab and place them on this fashion triangle template. Which template do you think your fashion retailer uses, by looking at kind of the balance of items they've got in store? You can find the template on Owler. So basics and core products are the money makers, of the bread and butter of your brand. They rarely go in the sale, as they are consistent pieces throughout the year, and customers will always buy these pieces. Therefore, you can buy a bigger volume, and bigger volumes higher means higher margin. Sometimes fashion styles can become core styles as well, or basic styles. Directional doesn't always make up the directional items don't always make the business a lot of money, but it shows that they're looking for trend pieces. So it doesn't always have a good margin, but this is not always important to the buyer, especially if they're wanting to have directional pieces. However, as a brand, you have to buy fashion to be in line with high street competitions. So it also adds excitement, or that wow factor to a range, and keeps customers coming back for more, looking at that newness. And it's ideal for media and marketing coverage as well. So a good example is Camille's from a couple of years ago. So this is his range plan, and he's plotted it on the fashion triangle. So he's got a good balance across the whole thing. So it's got a few directional pieces at the top, his staple kind of core bits of fashion in the middle, and then the basics at the bottom. So looking at each of your own range plans, ask yourself, do you have a good spread of items across each of these segments? Yes, that's fine. Then you have a balanced range. No, perhaps you need to mix it up a little, or add in some new styles and choose some new CADs. So again, you can use this template once you complete your range, and you can use it in your sign off at formative assessment. So at your formative assessment, which is another couple of weeks away, you will need to justify your decision for all your garment group selection, selling period, intended launch week, and so on. And a good way to do that, because you've only got 5 minutes for this and 5 slides, is to use templates such as the Boston Matrix, which we'll look at next week, and that fashion triangle.